Welcome to the next partner webinar series. We are thrilled you could join us today for this really valuable webinar on something that is still a mystery to me and mystery to many, and we all struggle to understand it regularly. That is the demon that is SEO. So thank you for joining us for SEO best practices. My name is Lisa Friedlander, and next is an innovative new model for the delivery of legal services for startup and emerging growth companies from launch to exit. We utilize fixed fee price legal packages brought to you by seasoned business attorneys that are entrepreneurs and investors alongside a robust technology platform. Today, we are super lucky to have Clark Taylor, Chief Digital Officer from Atigro. Clark brings over 25 years of experience as an SEO advisor to some of the world's most visible brands in e-commerce, healthcare, automotive, financial, hospitality, media, and technology. Clark has led corporate and agency SEO teams supporting startups and Fortune 10 brands. So sounds like we've got the best of the best. As we go, please feel free to add your questions to the chat. We will monitor them, and at the end of the presentation, we will leave time to address any and all questions. So without further ado, Clark, I'd love to kick it over to you. Thank you so much, and to the entire Atigro team for being here today.
All right, thanks Lisa for the introduction. I hope I don't have any more technical difficulties as we were getting started. My computer's crashed, so keep your fingers crossed that doesn't happen again. I'm going to switch and share my screen now. And let me just do a check here, make sure everyone can see my screen.
Looks great.
All
and
right.
We can hear you great. Thank you.
Appreciate the head nods. As we get started, please, I'm not a speaker. I'm a practitioner, and I'm going to be best if I'm not just like talking about slides. If I'm just kind of talking with everyone here. And so I know a lot of people ask to hold questions to the end, but I encourage you to ask questions as we go. It will make it less boring and more interactive. Lisa, if you would kind of, if we go down a rabbit hole, which sometimes in SEO we do go down rabbit holes, please feel free to pull me back out of that rabbit hole because we can tend to go pretty far down. Just wanted to add to what Lisa had said. I appreciate that nice introduction. I kind of have a unique perspective to SEO in that I have worked in-house with corporations, and I also have worked with agencies, large and small. So over those 25 years, it's kind of a different perspective that somebody who's worked both in-house and at the agency level. I want to start first. Of course, we're talking about SEO, and when we talk about SEO, most people think of Google. There are other search engines out there, of course, but we all know that Google matters the most because I don't know the latest statistics, but it's something like, I think Google owns something like 85% of the market share of all searches. And I believe that number is actually underreported. I think Bing and some other search engines, Bing in particular gets installed on people's browsers automatically when you get a new computer, things like that. So I think it's probably actually higher than that. Let's see. What we are going to talk about today is something that has kind of, it really hasn't changed. Satisfaction is a ranking signal. What has happened is that Google has gotten a lot better at understanding if a user, when one of their users, if somebody who's searching on Google, they have a better understanding now if the user is satisfied with the search results. So it's kind of always been Google's goal to satisfy users, but they have had a hard time understanding when a user was satisfied or not. If you guys are at least somewhat familiar with SEO, I don't know the background of everyone on this call, but you've probably heard that there are hundreds of signals from backlinks, of course, your content and title tags, and there's literally hundreds of signals. But most people don't think of satisfaction as a signal, but that's really what Google's trying to do with all the parts of their algorithm, is trying to determine what is the best result to give to a user. Something else that has kind of changed over the years is that, in particular, it's really sped up in the last 3 to 5 years, is that the intent, or you matching the intent of the user, is more important than the actual keywords that you use. You don't have to, and you shouldn't be trying to cram keywords on your page, or in your content anymore. If you are writing to users, you're naturally going to use keywords. I'm not saying to ignore keywords, but I'm saying focus on users. Breadth and depth is going to perform. If you have depth and breadth of content, you're going to do better. We're going to talk about EAT today, which stands for expertise, authority, and trust. We're going to dive into that. And YMYL are some terms you may or may not have heard of. It stands for your money, your life. It's kind of a whole nother level of authority and trust that you're going to need to do well in Google. And something that I see a lot of writers and publishers on the web forget about is the user experience, and content actually matters quite a bit. Next, I just want to talk kind of about the state of Google and the state of content in general. Google is definitely not the same as it was 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. They their goals are the same, but they are really starting to use AI, machine learning, natural language processing to do a better job at giving people better results. And I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to go and use other browsers like DuckDuckGo or Bing or other browsers. I know I have. I try to play around with other search engines, but usually what happens is you come back to Google. And the reason for that is the other search engines just don't do as good a job generally as at bringing you the results that you're looking for. Google actually, one of the reasons for that is Google has a patent to use backlinks. And it's one of the major things that sets Google apart from other search engines, is that their algorithm relies heavily on trust symbols or citations or votes from other websites. It's a really important thing that makes Google different. But if there's one piece of advice that I can give you today, and if you're taking notes, this is something that I hope you'll write down and try to do this, is you need to diversify. Don't become so reliant on Google. Everybody's here because you want to learn how to get more traffic, more business, more revenue from Google. But it can all go away tomorrow. I've seen it happen to websites. If a developer makes a mistake, or you have a migration that goes wrong, or you accidentally violate Google's guidelines, or intentionally violate Google's guidelines, you can lose all of your traffic overnight. I have seen sites literally lose 80% of all of their traffic because in one case they actually migrated to a new website. They didn't do proper testing, and Google basically choked on their website, and it took them about 6 months to recover from that. Don't ignore social media. Don't, I know that some of them, Atigro's clients, as much as 80% of all of their traffic, not just search engine traffic, comes from Google. And that's pretty scary when you're that dependent on Google for your traffic. Focus on your brand. Just imagine, just an example, imagine if you search for something on Google related to like a product for your home or hardware. Let's say that you searched for a refrigerator or a dishwasher or some piece of plumbing hardware, and Google didn't show you Lowe's or Home Depot or any of those stores. You would think that Google was broken. And I think the other thing you want to do to make yourself not so dependent on Google is growing your brand, just to make sure people know who you are. And even if they don't find you in Google, they go there. And a good example of that is Amazon. I think a lot of people now know you will see Amazon appear in search results when you search for a variety of products. A lot of people, including myself, I just go directly to Amazon because I know they're going to have reviews of the products I'm looking for. I know that my credit card is already entered. All I have to do is click buy now and it's on the way to my house. I know that it's easy to return their products in most cases. So you want to think about that a little bit and not become so dependent on Google. Okay, I want to talk about Google's algorithm updates recently, and let me just pause there, see if anybody has any questions so far. And do feel free to butt in as I'm talking. I'm completely fine with that. Again, satisfaction is a ranking signal. I've kind of talked about some of this before, but some of their algorithms, in particular, since Hummingbird, it was the name of an algorithm update, and RankBrain and BERT. CWV stands for Core Web Vitals. It has to do with the mobile experience and also now the desktop experience. How fast does your page load? If anyone here has ever clicked, if you've been on your mobile phone and you clicked on a website and the site pops up and you go to click on a link or a button, and then all of a sudden the layout shifts and you accidentally click on the wrong thing, that's called cumulative layout shift, and that's kind of the kinds of things that Google's addressing there. Google knows that users hate that type of behavior, and so what they're starting to do is they're starting to punish websites that have that type of behavior, even if it's unintentional. So yes, user experience is not just providing like the content that they're looking for. It's also about making sure that it loads quickly and that people find it easy to navigate your site and they're not frustrated with trying to use your website. My wife is constantly giving me examples of websites that Atigro needs to go and try to reach out to them because they have a terrible user experience. I think Cricket was one of them. She said, "Hey, they need help." She's a crafter, so yeah, user experience is really important, and matching the audience intent and making sure that your content is what they're looking for is going to be really important. I want to talk about something. I have to give Eric Enga, who is kind of my mentor. He's the author of the book, The Art of SEO. I have to give him credit for this 100 user model. I did not come up with this myself. But what you want to think about when you're creating content is imagine that 100 users visit your web page. What percentage of those 100 users find what they're looking for? Because sometimes the user might have a very generic query. They might not be very specific, but they might have a specific intent, even though that their search didn't match their intent. So your job as a publisher or a marketer is to make sure that you have a higher you match the needs of those 100 users better than your competition. What I want to talk about next is how we do this at Atigro. How do we make sure that our content matches and meets the intent and is better than the competition? And there's three different entities here. We have the SEO person, which would be somebody like me, and we have subject matter experts or writers. And probably for most of you guys, you're either business owners or marketers or writers, or you might be subject matter experts yourself. And let me just ask you a question here. If you're on mute, if you can come off and this maybe make this a little bit more interactive, but who do you think should be writing your content?
Well, our customers, if we could get them to do that, do we send them a survey and say, what do you consider, key duplication? Or what other terms do you use for key duplication? So
Yeah, I think, yeah, like interviewing clients is your customers is a great thing to do. That everybody should do that to understand what they search for, because sometimes what you think they search for might not be what they search for. But then the person, your customers likely are not going to write the content, but you probably have somebody at your business, you know, and SEME is short for subject matter expert. Could be a writer, could be if you're a small business owner, you're writing this content yourself. But should the SEO person write the content? Probably not. You've all probably seen articles on the web that you can tell it was just written for SEO. And there is a technical term, it's a really super technical term for content like that. Again, I want to give Eric Inga credit for this, coining this phrase. And I worked with him for 10 years, so I do use a lot of his sayings and things like that. But the technical term for that content written by an SEO is called blather. And you all probably, you recognize it when you see it. It's crammed with keywords. It's not really useful. And so the SEO person is not the right person to write that content. But what happens if the subject matter expert writes the content? And I believe it was Mark said, you know, if you don't interview your customers, or what if you don't look at what your competitors are doing? What if your content is not as good as your competitors? Then what happens? You might think that you've written really good content that has a chance to compete with your competitors, but in reality, when you publish that content, it falls flat and doesn't perform. And so what the SEO person should do is that they should work with the subject matter expert. And we at Atigro, we have some really sophisticated tools that does the same type of analysis that Google does when it's analyzing content and trying to determine who should rank for this particular query. And so we use these tools to help inform the writers. I always like to say, you know, let great writers write great content, but sometimes great writers fall short. We have some clients we're working with now. Of course, I'm not going to call them out by name, but they have true subject matter experts. Some of them are in the field of marketing. One of the others is in the healthcare field. And they really have subject matter experts, but when they write, they're not doing enough analysis of the competing pages that they're up against when it comes to ranking in Google. So what we do is we use these tools to analyze the competing pages and help inform the writers of all the topics that should be covered in their piece of content. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Again, please interrupt me if you have questions.
Yeah, does it matter on the keywords or the search words you're looking for where it is on your website? Can it just be mentioned somewhere, even if it's on page 4 or 5? Does this have the same effect, or does it need to be on page 1?
You mean page 1 of your website?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we are going to talk about site structure a little bit later, but the short answer is yes, it does matter where it is on your site. And again, I wouldn't focus so much on like keywords. Of course, keywords are important because if you're writing about a topic and you cover it and you cover it and you're talking about it in depth and breadth, you're going to naturally use the keyword you're trying to rank for and related keywords. So that should happen naturally. It shouldn't be forced.
Okay.
You're never trying to cram keywords into your content. There has been a trend in the last 3 to 5 years of creating what I've heard people call snackable content. And I think that's because people's attention spans are really short, and people trying to, you know, they focus on the messaging and they try to just say things really short and concise. But the truth is Google doesn't like snackable content. Google wants like the 5-course dinner. They don't want a snack. You need to cover your topic in depth, and hopefully you have a breadth of content around that. Snackable content is great for social media. It's great for TikTok videos and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, but it is not great for doing well in Google search. The thing that you want to remember about Google is Google is still primarily a document classifier, even with all this the AI and machine learning and everything else that they're doing. They still, how Google works is they crawl your website, they find a piece of content on your website, they scan it and they index it and they classify it for all the things that it is about and all the keywords. So you have to cover a topic with some depth and breadth of content. I'm going to first talk about content breadth and then depth. Content breadth, as you might imagine, it's just covering related topics, covering more related topics than the competition. And I'm going to share a screen with you guys right now. I use this site as an example quite a bit because they do a really good job. And in particular, in depth, on breadth, they also do a good job on depth of content. But on breadth of content, I would challenge you to just pretty much type in any disease or condition into Google, and what you will see is that Mayo Clinic is usually in the top 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5 positions, depending on when you type. But they have an amazing breadth of content. Any disease or condition you can imagine, whether it's a brain tumor or a sprained ankle, most of the time they're going to be up there. They have an amazing breadth of content. Home Depot is another example. I mentioned them earlier. Almost anything that you can imagine searching for your home, even if it's not in their store, they probably have it on their website. Breadth of content isn't something that's going to happen overnight. It's something that it's definitely a long-term commitment. Takes a lot of work to get there. I assure you, Mayo Clinic, this didn't happen overnight. It happened over, probably really decades of building out their content library. Depth of content is very similar. It's really just going further on any particular piece of content. If I'm going to go back to the Mayo Clinic example again. If you actually look at their brain tumor page, they don't just talk about the brain tumors, symptoms and causes, diagnosis and treatment, doctors and departments. They also talk about, there's links to all the different types of brain tumors, and they have related articles. They have causes, risk factors, and here's all the kind of the related content. So this is really an example of depth. They have infographics and videos, and depth of content is extremely important. There's lots of other good examples, not in the medical field. Even Home Depot, you might not think of them having breadth of content, but they actually do have blog posts and how-to videos. When you dig deeply into their site, you see that they have expansive knowledge on the topic. All right, I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit. So let's just say that you have subject matter experts and they are writing excellent content and your website is loaded with depth and breadth of content. Is it guaranteed that you're going to rank now and you're going to dominate Google? The answer to that question is no. And generally the reason, if you have great content and you're still not performing well, it probably means you don't have enough EAT. And of course, in SEO, we use a lot of acronyms and throw out a lot of terms, but EAT stands for expertise, authority, and trust. It's really important if you want to increase your traffic and your leads, reduce your dependence on paid placement. You want to become a thought leader and get increased visibility across the web and get backlinks. It's really important that you have a high degree of EAT. EAT requires really kind of at the heart of EAT is external validation. Yeah, your content has to be credible. Google's going to evaluate the expertise of your content, and how it's written. They're even going to look at things like grammar and spelling and things like that. But they're going to look at actually who is the author. We have a client right now that we have a really good piece of content that one of their authors has written, but Google's choosing not to index it. Google has crawled it, but they have not indexed the content. And we believe that the reason is that the author has no external validation. You can search for the author's name on Google. You can't see any credentials anywhere that validates them as an expert. So this external validation is really important. External validation can also come in the form of backlinks from other authoritative sites. So in this particular case, if this article was cited by some other authoritative source, then that would probably increase the likelihood that Google would index this piece of content.
I have a question about authoritative source.
Uh-huh.
What identifies, like, in the vision of Google, a source as being more authoritative than another?
So it's a good question. So just imagine the case of a doctor. Doctors are most likely going to have profiles other places, and they're also going to look at, I think I'm trying to remember, there's a pretty well-known site that's just like a directory of doctors. They're going to look at directories. They're also going to look at any maybe white papers that they have written, or peer-reviewed studies. They're basically scanning the entire web universe and looking for any indications of their expertise. They may also look at relationships that they have to other people on the web. So it may be their a LinkedIn profile and your connections on LinkedIn or other social sites. It could be, has this person or doctor been mentioned? We know that Google has a patent that says that I don't know that they're actually using this, but I do know that they have a patent that says that they can use mentions, in particular brand mentions, to understand the authority of an entity, whether that be a person or a business. So did that answer your question?
It does answer my question, and it has me thinking a lot about a project that I'm working on, but I won't monopolize with that going. I'm really appreciating what you're selling here.
No, it's a really important topic. So the next kind of natural question might be, well, if you don't have authority or expertise, how do you get it? I know I just skipped ahead a slide here to your money, your life. Let me go back here for a minute. So there's a couple of ways that you can kind of create this authority if you don't have it, or expertise. You can either hire subject matter experts, which is expensive. You can partner with them, or you can build them. Building them takes time. So if for example, if you have a writer, maybe they're not a subject matter expert on something, but as they begin writing and researching and writing more on it, eventually they become a subject matter expert, and people will start citing them, and they start to become known for that. Partnering is kind of a faster way to do it. I worked with a website where they did not have any subject matter experts themselves. They were in the financial industry, and what they did is they partnered, or they actually contracted with other financial experts. Most of these experts were people that you would see on the Sunday talk shows talking about the economy and finances and investments and things like that. And they contracted them to be their subject matter expert. And that worked out really effectively for them. They didn't have to add somebody to their payroll. I don't know the details of what they paid them to write, but they were true subject matter experts. So there's ways you can do that. If you take the route of hiring or building your own credibility as an expert, it's definitely going to take more time. There is the whole other level to EAT, which falls under your money, your life. And this is when a topic that you're writing about impacts somebody's health, their finances, or their general well-being. So anything that's, financial advice, medical advice, health and safety, life decisions. The example that I was giving you of a current client that I think that they don't really have the expertise, they don't have that external validation. The article that they wrote deals with laws and regulations. So I think that they just don't have the external validation that's needed, in particular because I believe the content that they produced deals with laws and regulations. So I think that they are being impacted by your money, your life, which is just, again, it's just a whole nother level of scrutiny, because Google doesn't want to show somebody in the search results if they don't have a high degree of confidence that the advice that they're giving is accurate. These are just some examples. I almost hate to put this up because it's so limiting, but these are examples of types of sites where your money, your life is going to come into play. And there might be pieces of content on any of these sites that are not governed by your money, your life. But there are probably parts of the sites that are. Some of them obviously are. If you're dealing with somebody's health or finances, it most certainly is going to fall under your money, your life. Etsy might be surprising to some people. Why would Etsy be on there? And I would say some pages, some products that people are selling on Etsy might not be covered by your money, your life. It might not just be that important. But if something is a major purchase, in particular like a car, that might be seen by Google as a your money, your life query, because it's such a big important purchase. So
Etsy kind of makes sense because they give entrepreneurs like advice and stuff.
Mhm.
So that makes sense.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. If they have a blog and they are giving advice to people, that certainly could be your money, your life.
And Etsy sellers are on a strike. I don't know if anyone in this call has noticed that.
I did not.
Yeah, and my current project is to develop a site that undermines Etsy by being a searchable platform without being a retailable platform, and kind of like taking away their access to predatory feeding. So just sharing that. That's why I'm here.
Interesting. And I'm sorry, I can't see. Who was that was speaking? What was your first name?
My name is Bridget.
Okay. Thanks for that, Bridget. I did not know that there was any type of a strike going on. Okay. So I believe that was Mark asked earlier. May be wrong. I think that was you, Mark, that was asking about content structure.
Correct.
Where the keywords are. Definitely matters. User experience matters. Your content structure matters a whole lot. Let's see. I'm trying to find my notes on this. All right. So it not only matters to humans. I mean, when we think of site structure, you guys are probably thinking of how do you get to someone's content from your site. It definitely matters to humans. It also matters to Google. There are a lot of sites that might think about humans, but they forget about Google. An example of that would be if you go to a website and they have a search box and you can search for any product or service. That's great for humans, but Google is not going to enter a query in your search box. So Google also has to have a way that they can get to that content. So it matters. You have to think of it in terms of Google and humans. It needs to be organized. Your content needs to be scannable. The topic of hubs and clusters is a really hot topic in SEO today. I don't know why it seems like more people are talking about it today than ever, but it's really always been important. And the easiest way to think about a content hub or a cluster as a way of organizing your content is to imagine if you went into a grocery store and you were looking for produce, and there wasn't like a produce section. Imagine if just produce was scattered throughout the grocery store. And I know some grocery stores are pretty bad. Like there are some products that I don't understand why it's in this particular aisle, but for the most part, grocery stores do a pretty good job of organizing the different sections so that it makes it easy for you to know where to go. So if you go to the produce section, you will, and then in particular, let's say you're looking for berries. So produce might be your hub. You go to the produce hub, and they have a whole bunch of different types of produce there. And then maybe they have in a subtopic cluster, a way to think about that. Maybe they have an organic produce section, or they have a section on, berries, and maybe within berries, they have a whole organic section, a section of berries that are organic. This is also organizing your content is really important to Google as well as users. I mean, for users, just obviously it makes it easy for them to find the content that they're looking for on your website. But for Google, it helps them understand that you actually have depth and breadth of content on this topic. So it can actually improve your rankings overall. So, Mark, in your case, and this is a little bit of a rabbit hole. So I'm going to go down the rabbit hole just a little bit, but I'm going to try to pull myself back up before I go too deep. If you're trying to rank for an important keyword, the one thing that you want to keep in mind is that the further away an important topic, or if you're thinking in terms of keywords, if you have a page that's, you're trying to rank for a particular keyword, the further it is away from the home page, the more difficult it is going to be to rank for it. Because Google will look at it. If something is really important to you, it should be really close to your homepage. It should be a navigation link or element in your homepage, or maybe it's even featured prominently right on your homepage. So if you bury it deep in your website, Google's going to look at it. Well, they must not think that, again, if it was, if you make keys, or if you're a locksmith, if you have keys made, if that's really deep in your website, Google's going to say, well, it's not that important to them. We're not going to rank it as high. So that generally the closer to your homepage an important topic can be, the better. With large websites, the challenge is if you just imagine if you were Home Depot, right? They sell, I don't know how many SKUs they have. They probably have probably tens of thousands of products on their website. You can't feature them all on the homepage, and you can't link to every single one of them from their main navigation. So it becomes a business decision. How are you going to organize your content? What's going to be your focus areas? What's going to be top and close to the homepage? And then you can kind of bury not bury it, but have it organized so it's a little bit deeper in your site structure. So does anybody have any questions on that? We're going to talk about page structure and layout next. Okay, so the hubs and clusters is kind of a way to organize your content. The page structure, the way it's set up, actually matters too. And to me, this seems to be one of the things that writers and content publishers forget about, is that they might have a title on the page, or that, like, whatever the name of your article or piece of content is, and then it's just a whole bunch of paragraphs, lots of long paragraphs, not broken up. But by providing a structure or hierarchy to your pages, it makes it more scannable. It makes it easy for a reader to find what they're looking for on a page. People don't like to read big, generally. There are some exceptions. Sometimes people like to dive into something and read a really in-depth article. But generally, if you break it up and use headings and subheadings. As you can see here, I have H1 is a type of heading. It's usually what the name of your page is about or what it's the primary topic. And then subheadings or subheadings. Break content up using bullet points. And also avoid skipping levels in the hierarchy. So, if you have an H1, you wouldn't have an H3 next. It would be an H1. It's kind of like an outline. You would have the name of your page, and then you would use an outline format to have subheadings and subheadings or bullet points within the subheadings, and things like that. These subheadings are most, usually going to naturally have keywords. I don't worry about cramming keywords in them, but just, think about what's useful to the user. And when I was mentioning, in one of the early slides about how we do at Atigro, how we do the analysis and provide the detail of what you need to cover on the page, sometimes we get a lot of insights on what people are looking for and what subheadings are necessary. So that if someone, again, think about the 100 user model, trying to meet the needs of those 100 people, make sure that your subheadings cover some of those primary needs that people might be looking for. So when they scan your page, they see that you cover the topic or you meet the intent that they're looking for, and they can easily find it. Engagement content or engagement elements is something else that is really important. I'm going to share my screen again with you guys to give you some examples of some pages that have really great engagement elements. One is this page about the northern cardinal. So this isn't just notice how that this isn't just a list, a big list of paragraphs to read about the cardinal. They're using images. They have lots of great images. They have tabs where you can click to view, and this is another example of depth of content. So not only do they cover the cardinal and other birds, which would be breadth of content, but they go really deep into the breadth of content and maps. But they have images, and you can see that they have lots of images. Again, this is an example of breadth of content. They cover various species of the cardinal. There are some ads on here, which are okay. You just want to be careful with not having too many ads where it takes away from your content. They actually have an infographic here. So it shows the relative size, smaller than American bird. There are things that make you stop and engage and interact with the content. And we know that Google is trying to, it's one of the things that they're doing with machine learning is they're looking at how long is somebody staying on the page? Are they engaging with it? Or are they coming to your page and are they immediately bouncing back to the search results and going to a different website because they didn't find it engaging? But they have videos. I'm just kind of like giving you some ideas of engagement elements that you can use. Charts, graphs, quizzes, anything that's interactive. Another example for, I lost that example. My computer crashed right before we did this. I had another an example of a more technical page where people are actually using snippets of code. And they have a little testing tool right on their webpage where you can test your own HTML code. So anything that adds value and makes it more interesting to users can be really helpful. Any questions on page layout? Okay, I'm going to jump into some real world case studies. Content, what we're talking about here actually does work. You have probably heard that content is king before. I would say it's not only king, it's queen, it's emperor, it's everything. All the things related to technical SEO have to do with the ability for Google to crawl and index and render and understand your content, but it really is all about content. But this first case study is for a client that we've been working with. They're called Penn Creative Strategy. And just using this methodology we talked about of doing deep analysis and working with somebody who is a true subject matter expert to create content. We were able to help get them on page, not just page 1 of Google. And actually, this is called position 0 here. Oops, I went backwards. When you get this rich answer, when you search for a question on Google, and you don't even have to click through to the website, this is something we refer to in the industry as position 0. And basically, Google's giving you the answer to the query there, but our client was able to get the #1 position and this rich answer, basically by us just making sure that they answered the question fully and they provide a depth of content on this topic. This is actually I actually have the source here of this, but this was from a past agency that I work with. This where we actually looked at the data and looked at the amount of content was produced. This is what was for an addiction treatment site, and this is the publishing volume. And you can see that this is a large scale content project. They were producing massive amounts of content, primarily to help increase their visibility as an authority. So the chart on the left here is the publishing volume, and this is the number of referring domains. So this is the amount of backlinks that the site got as a result of that content. The result of that, this is their traffic. This is something anyone, you can go to search metrics. There's other tools that kind of measure your search visibility, but you can see here over the same period of time, how as they publish more content, how their traffic and their visibility just exploded from the creation of that content. This is a different example. Again, this is a consumer retail site. So the other site was really more of it's a health addiction site, and they were publishing a lot of information on health addiction. This is a consumer retail site. You all have probably been on this site before, but they had a major initiative to produce more high quality content. And you can kind of see this again is the volume, and this is the increase in referring domains or backlinks as they publish that content. And what you'll see here is their growth over the same time period is their growth in SEO visibility over time. And one of the things I want to point out here, you see this decline. We eventually figured out what happened here is that the quality of the content they were producing a large volume of content, but the quality of the content that they were producing fell a little bit. And then they recommitted to producing higher quality content, and they got the gains going back again. Any questions on those case studies? Good. Okay. Just to kind of sum up what we've covered here today, the important takeaways from this is that satisfaction is a ranking signal. People don't think about that, but it's really the most important thing that Google is worrying about. When they send a visitor to your website, they want to know that the user is happy. And if they're not, they know that user is going to go back to Google and they're going to pick another result. And if that happens enough, Google is going to not rank you as well as other people. You want to make sure that you're matching the intent. It's way more important than keywords. Depth and breadth of content is extremely important. Avoid snackable content. Keep that for social media. You've got to focus on EAT. It's not enough just to produce good content. You have to have subject matter experts who have some external validation, and user experience and structure matters. And one thing that I did not cover, I want to make sure I mention this because it's actually critical, is that Google is now using your mobile site first to determine your how they rank you. They switched a few years ago to mobile first indexing, which means that it doesn't mean that they don't care how your desktop site performs. They still will look at your desktop site, but what they really care about is how your site performs for visitors when they're on their phone. And the reason that matters is everybody's on their phone. Most people's websites, you probably have 60 or 70% of your visitors who who are coming to your website on their phone. So you need to make sure you have a really good mobile experience, and it needs to perform really quickly. I will just stop here for any questions, anything that you didn't understand or you want to deep dive. And Bridget, I don't know if you're getting any questions. If somebody is moderating, I don't know if anybody's using chat in here or not.
Yeah, Clark, I've been looking at so far, nothing in the chat, so feel free to add it, folks, or unmute yourself. This has been fascinating. It's so much, and it's really integral to what we all do. If you had to say like don't do's, right? There's a lot of like great things here of what to do and some acronyms I never heard of before, so really appreciate that. But what are sort of some top like 1, 2, 3, like never do this with regard to SEO?
Well, so never cram keywords, never look at keyword rankings and think you need to cram that keyword on the page more than you are. It could be that maybe you're not using it enough, but you should be more thoughtful about it. You should be looking at the competition, your competing pages, and trying to determine, why are they ranking and I'm not? And usually it's not because of keywords. It's usually because their product is better or their information on a particular topic is better than yours. It's most likely not because you didn't use a keyword the right number of times.
I have a question here.
Okay.
One is, when we're talking about quality, I'm interested in like, yes, like the factual level of information, but also, is there any information on your end about inspiration or that kind of thing, like things that really drive the algorithm on social media of like getting inspired to go to the gym, that kind of thing? How is that working in like Google's format as well? Like, are they taking those things into consideration? And does it even matter for this longer format content?
Yeah. So the question on I think, Bridget, what you're asking, does social media? Were you asking, does social media help SEO?
My question is more about like kind of maybe the existential qualities of the content on social media, like and also like I'm just not getting the right word for it, but like things like inspiration and motivation and those types of qualities that drive interest on social media, are those the same kind of things that are driving interest in the SEO, or is it more like fact-based information that is more interesting to Google's algorithm?
So yeah, it's a really interesting topic. So so first of all, there is no social media signals are not a direct ranking factor. However, if you publish something on social media and you get a lot of engagement from you, that's a really good signal that people are interested in that. And maybe you should write an in-depth article on that. If you share, whether it's a video or a TikTok or an Instagram or LinkedIn post, and you get a lot of engagement and there's a lot of interest, then yeah, maybe it's a good way to test your message and your thoughts to see if you should produce more content on it. But it's not a direct ranking factor. But social media, I think a lot of people think that it is a ranking factor, and there does seem to be a correlation between content that does well on social and content that does well in SEO. But the correlation is most likely because the content is great, right? So if you have a great piece of content, it's going to do well and get more interaction on social, and it's also going to do better on Google. Did that make sense, or did that help a little bit?
Yeah, it totally makes sense what you're saying. And I'm starting to kind of be able to visualize, even in like the physical space, how the like the cycle that happens between social media and the SEO and the website and Google. So I really thank you for kind of describing that in such like a really physical way throughout the presentation. That has been helpful.
It was just,
Thank you.
a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, we have one more question, Clark, if we can squeeze it in before the top of the
Sure.
hour. From John, is there a way to make content behind a login visible to Google? Does engagement behind a login count in Google's eyes?
So it is possible. There is some special code. So I think probably what John's talking about is like if it's behind a paywall or something like that. But in general, in general, content that's behind a login, Google can't get to it because Google can't actually log in. But there is a way, some special coding that you can do. And I won't have time to go into the technical details of how to do this, but basically what you're doing is creating a separate version for Google that allows Google to see that content that's behind a paywall. And a lot of news publishers will use this technique. John, you've probably seen a lot. Some newspapers will let you read or view 1 or 2 articles, and then all of a sudden they paywall you. But there's a way that you can allow Google to see more of it. But it's some pretty advanced technical SEO to do that and do it correctly.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
All right.
Of course,
Anybody have
of course,
one
you
final?
want.
Go ahead, Clark. Go ahead.
I'll say you want most of your content visible to Google. A lot of people are afraid to give stuff away, but that's how you get links. People will link to you, and you build your credibility by giving whatever your knowledge is away to people, and you'll get links from that, and Google will respect that more.
Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Any final quick questions for Clark before we carry on with the day? This has been super, super informative.
Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Great to thank you, Clark and Ken and the entire Atigro team. We really value as a next partner and very much appreciate you taking the time today. So thanks to you, and thanks for everybody for attending. Feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. I put that in the chat, as well as check out our events page on our website. Our next partner webinar is May 2nd, and that is on 409A valuations. So if you intend to raise money or grant equity in some way, that would be a great webinar for you to attend as well. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, Lisa.